I was standing by the stove making my morning coffee when my daughter-in-law, Sabrina, stormed into the house, shouting into her phone. At 35, she still lived with my son Ethan and me in our small home near Clear Lake, Texas. She claimed it was to help take care of me, but I knew better. They simply couldn't afford their own bills. That morning she was furious because her old PR agency hadn't paid the commission she thought she deserved. When I turned off the burner and gently asked if she wanted breakfast, Sabrina exploded. "Mind your own business, old woman. Can't you see I'm on the phone?" Then something happened I never imagined I'd experience. She spit, right in my face. The warm saliva slid down my cheek while she kept screaming, "You're useless! You should just stay quiet in your little corner!" I wiped my face with my apron, swallowed the humiliation, and said nothing. My name is Irene Walker. I'm 68, and I've never been weak. After my husband Robert passed away when our son was 6, I raised Ethan alone. For 38 years, I worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Houston, so my boy could study, so he could have a decent life. I saved every dollar to buy this house by the lake, dreaming it would one day be a home filled with love and respect. But for the past 3 years, since Sabrina lost her job and moved back in, this house has turned into something else, a kind of quiet hell. She treats me like hired help. She yells at me in front of my grandson, Lucas, and I stay silent for him. That morning, when I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, my cheek still wet from her spit, something inside me began to stir. All afternoon, while Sabrina was out running errands and Lucas stayed with me, I couldn't stop thinking. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "Grandma, why does Mom always yell at you?" Those words hit me like lightning. Lucas was learning that disrespecting women, especially elders, was normal. That night, after they'd gone to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and saw my life clearly for the first time. Sabrina wasn't helping me. She was using me. The house was in my name. My pension covered the bills. I babysat while they looked for work. But what they didn't know was I still had more control over my life than they thought, and everything was about to change. The next morning, the sky was gray, heavy, like it carried the same weight I felt in my chest. Sabrina woke up already irritated, as she did most days, and complained while I made breakfast. "The coffee's too strong, Irene. Can't you make a decent cup anymore?" she said, eyes glued to her phone. Lucas ran into the kitchen, his school uniform wrinkled. As I bent down to fix his collar, he whispered, "Grandma, I dreamed we moved somewhere else, somewhere happy." Those words broke me. A 10-year-old shouldn't feel that kind of sadness. He already sensed the tension, the disrespect that had soaked into our walls. While they ate, I stood by the stove, watching the same scene play out again. Sabrina scrolled through social media, ignoring her son's little voice. "Mom, my teacher said we need to make a family tree," Lucas said, excited. "Can't you see I'm busy?" she snapped without looking up. "But Mom—" He stopped mid-sentence, the spoon frozen halfway to his mouth. My heart cracked a little more. It happened every day. Sabrina had lost all connection to what truly mattered, her own child. After dropping Lucas at school, I came home and found Sabrina in my bedroom on the phone, rummaging through my drawers. "Yes, Carla," she said to her friend, "this house has great potential. You know how old people are, always exaggerating their health problems. Once she's in a nursing home, I can finally remodel the place." When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she didn't even flinch. She just kept talking. "This area is going up fast. The property value will double in a few years." That afternoon, I sat in my favorite armchair in the living room, the same spot where I used to read the paper aloud to Robert every morning, and realized it was time to stop being the silent victim in my own story. The weeks that followed stripped away every illusion I still had about my family. One Sunday, Sabrina invited a close friend over for dinner. I was thrilled, thinking maybe, finally, we'd have a warm family evening. I roasted turkey breast, the dish that had been everyone's favorite for years. I set the table with the magnolia porcelain set Robert once gave me and wore my navy blue dress, the one that always made me feel a little dignified. But when her friend arrived, the two of them locked themselves in Sabrina's room. From the kitchen sink, where I was washing dishes, I heard fragments of their conversation, and my blood ran cold. "Sabrina, I completely understand," her friend's shrill, self-satisfied voice echoed down the hallway. "Look at me and my husband. Life's peaceful. No more watching over an old lady 24/7. You've done your duty. Your mother-in-law had her life. Now it's time to live yours." I heard them giggle. Then Sabrina answered, her tone half whining, half bitter. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a museum, Carla. I can't move anything, can't change a thing, and I'm supposed to act grateful all the time because it's her house. I feel like a teenager again." "Exactly," Carla replied. "And how long is this supposed to last? People live to 90 these days. Can you imagine 20 more years of this?" My hands trembled as I kept drying the same plate over and over. That was my daughter-in-law and her best friend, the young women I'd once welcomed and helped, now speaking about me as though I were a burden, an obstacle to their happiness. In that moment, I realized it wasn't paranoia. They truly saw me as something in their way. When they finally came out of the room and sat down for dinner, they acted as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Mom, this turkey smells amazing," Sabrina said with that practiced smile. "Doesn't it?" Carla added, lifting her wine glass. "No one cooks Southern food like Miss Irene." But I'd already seen their real faces. That night I couldn't sleep. Something inside me cracked, and I knew it would never fully heal. In the days that followed, I began noticing things I'd once excused or ignored, like the way Sabrina introduced me to guests. "This is my mother-in-law. She lives with us." As if I were a temporary guest in my own home, or when Lucas asked me to tell him a story, and she cut in, "Let Grandma rest, honey. She's old now. She shouldn't be playing so much." And I wondered, since when did caring for my grandson become a burden? Since when did age become a limit on love? One morning, while I was hanging laundry on the porch that overlooked Clear Lake, I heard Sabrina chatting with Mrs. Pierce, our neighbor. "Yes, you know the nursing home in Seabrook?" she said sweetly. "My friend sent her mom there. They take such good care of her. We really have to think ahead, don't we? We can't be selfish forever." I couldn't hear Mrs. Pierce's reply, but I saw Sabrina nodding and smiling. When I walked back inside, she hung up quickly and spoke as if nothing had happened. "Mom, don't you think you should get a bit more exercise? Maybe try those senior yoga classes? They'd do wonders for you," she said in that syrupy, fake concerned tone. But I recognized manipulation when I heard it. That afternoon, while Sabrina went to pick Lucas up from school, I decided to review my important papers. It had been years since I'd opened the oak chest where I kept all my documents. I'd always assumed everything was in order. But when I lifted the lid, something felt wrong. Some folders had been moved, a few papers were photocopied, and there were new documents I didn't remember ever signing, including a notarized power of attorney giving Sabrina access to my bank accounts in case of medical emergency. I didn't remember signing it. Yet there it was, my signature, neat and blue. I sat on the edge of my bed, those papers trembling in my hands, and realized my daughter-in-law had been preparing for this all along, planning to take control of my life without ever asking. That evening at dinner, I looked at my family differently. Sabrina chewed absent-mindedly while scrolling through her phone. Lucas tried to tell me about his school day, and I smiled, automatic and distant, while my mind sorted through this new reality. "Grandma, are you okay? You look sad," Lucas asked softly. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired," I lied, brushing his hair gently. Sabrina finally looked up. "Mom, if you're not feeling well, you should see a doctor. At your age, anything could be serious." Her tone carried no concern, only anticipation, as if illness would make her plans easier to justify. The next morning was Saturday. Sabrina announced she'd be out all day with friends. "Mom, you'll watch Lucas, right? I need a break." It wasn't a question. It was an order. I nodded as I always had, but this time there was something different about my silence. As she got ready, humming along to a pop song, I watched her carefully. The red lipstick, the phone always nearby. The expensive little accessories I couldn't imagine how she paid for. When she finally left, leaving Lucas watching cartoons in the living room, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my online bank account. What I discovered made my stomach drop. Sabrina had been accessing my main bank account for 6 months, quietly, methodically, pulling out small amounts I hadn't noticed, $40 here, $60 there, always with some reasonable excuse. Mom, Lucas needs his medication. The washer's broken, I'll call the repairman. The car needs urgent maintenance. But when I added it all up, those emergencies had drained nearly half of my pension each month, and worse, she had somehow gained access to the college fund I'd built for Lucas. That account held $25,000, saved from years of double shifts and sleepless nights. She had withdrawn $5,000 without my consent. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling a sour churn deep in my gut. It wasn't just about the money. It was about betrayal, deceit dressed up as love. Lucas ran up to me, cheerful as ever. "Grandma, can you make pancakes?" His voice, so innocent, so bright, was the sharpest contrast to the bitterness I felt. I pulled him close, kissed his forehead, and made his favorite breakfast with warm syrup and a bit of melting butter. While he ate, I made a decision that would change everything. I would no longer be the quiet, compliant grandmother who could be stolen from and humiliated. I was 68, but my mind had never been clearer. It was time they learned what it really meant to lose the one person who still cared about them. In the days that followed, I kept my routine unchanged. Outwardly calm, inwardly awake. Each morning, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in years. When Sabrina snapped at me, I simply nodded. When she asked for money, I handed her small bills without question. And each afternoon, once she left and Lucas was at school, I started making calls. The first was to Martin Hale, an old friend of my late husband. I told him everything. He listened quietly and then said a line I'll never forget. "Irene, respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you stop giving to those who refuse to return it." His words hit like a match striking dry wood. Then I called Attorney Hale, the man who'd helped me purchase this house years ago. I explained what I'd found, and his voice grew serious. "The power of attorney she had you sign, it's extremely broad, Mrs. Walker. It essentially gives her control over all your assets if she can claim you're mentally incompetent." And my heart stopped for a second. He continued, calm but firm. "Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think. Manipulative children, spouses, in-laws, they exploit trust. But you still have every right to revoke that document, and from what I can tell, you're perfectly capable of doing so." That afternoon, I left his downtown Houston office with a new folder in my bag and a plan that would quietly shake the foundation of everything Sabrina thought she controlled. That Friday evening, Sabrina came home with a look that chilled me. "Mom," she said while pouring herself a glass of water, "there's something important I need to talk about." I sat down at the kitchen table, pretending not to know where this conversation was headed. "What kind of something, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice soft. "Well," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about your health, and I think it's time we consider other options for your care." I tilted my head. "Other options?" "You know, specialized places where they can take better care of you. You'd have people your age to talk to, activities to join, medical supervision. You're so lonely here when I'm at work." The irony was brutal. She rarely worked more than 4 hours a day. The rest of the time she spent shopping or meeting friends. "Sabrina," I said evenly, "this is my home. I bought it with my own hands. I've maintained it for 20 years. I've been happy here." She sighed, like a mother humoring a stubborn child. "I understand you're attached, Mom, but you can't live alone forever. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the gas? I can't live with that worry." Her tone carried concern, but her eyes did not. "And besides," she added, swirling her glass, "selling the house would give us a solid amount to make sure you're cared for properly. Of course, I'd handle all the arrangements." That night, after tucking Lucas into bed, I stayed awake, piecing everything together. Every little comment about elderly accidents, every sigh about how expensive it was to maintain this house, every casual mention of nursing homes as luxury resorts. It had all been part of a slow, calculated campaign to convince me I was helpless, when in truth, she just wanted my money and my home. Early Monday morning, while Sabrina still slept off her hangover, I quietly got dressed, slipped my best leather handbag over my arm, gathered every document that mattered, and walked out the door, ready to reclaim the life she thought she already owned. What I discovered made my stomach drop. Sabrina had been accessing my main bank account for 6 months, quietly, methodically, pulling out small amounts I hadn't noticed. $40 here, $60 there, always with some reasonable excuse. "Mom, Lucas needs his medication. The washer's broken. I'll call the repairman. The car needs urgent maintenance." But when I added it all up, those emergencies had drained nearly half of my pension each month. And worse, she had somehow gained access to the college fund I'd built for Lucas. That account held $25,000, saved from years of double shifts and sleepless nights. She had withdrawn $5,000 without my consent. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling a sour churn deep in my gut. It wasn't just about the money. It was about betrayal, deceit dressed up as love. Lucas ran up to me, cheerful as ever. "Grandma, can you make pancakes?" His voice, so innocent, so bright, was the sharpest contrast to the bitterness I felt. I pulled him close, kissed his forehead, and made his favorite breakfast with warm syrup and a bit of melting butter. While he ate, I made a decision that would change everything. I would no longer be the quiet, compliant grandmother who could be stolen from and humiliated. I was 68, but my mind had never been clearer. It was time they learned what it really meant to lose the one person who still cared about them. In the days that followed, I kept my routine unchanged, outwardly calm, inwardly awake. Each morning, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in years. When Sabrina snapped at me, I simply nodded. When she asked for money, I handed her small bills without question. And each afternoon, once she left and Lucas was at school, I started making calls. The first was to Martin Hale, an old friend of my late husband. I told him everything. He listened quietly and then said a line I'll never forget. "Irene, respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you stop giving to those who refuse to return it." His words hit like a match striking dry wood. Then I called Attorney Hale, the man who'd helped me purchase this house years ago. I explained what I'd found, and his voice grew serious. "The power of attorney she had you sign, it's extremely broad, Mrs. Walker. It essentially gives her control over all your assets if she can claim you're mentally incompetent." My heart stopped for a second. He continued, calm but firm. "Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think. Manipulative children, spouses, in-laws, they exploit trust. But you still have every right to revoke that document, and from what I can tell, you're perfectly capable of doing so." That afternoon, I left his downtown Houston office with a new folder in my bag and a plan that would quietly shake the foundation of everything Sabrina thought she controlled. That Friday evening, Sabrina came home with a look that chilled me. "Mom," she said while pouring herself a glass of water, "there's something important I need to talk about." I sat down at the kitchen table, pretending not to know where this conversation was headed. "What kind of something, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice soft. "Well," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about your health, and I think it's time we consider other options for your care." I tilted my head. "Other options?" "You know, specialized places where they can take better care of you. You'd have people your age to talk to, activities to join, medical supervision. You're so lonely here when I'm at work." The irony was brutal. She rarely worked more than 4 hours a day. The rest of the time she spent shopping or meeting friends. "Sabrina," I said evenly, "this is my home. I bought it with my own hands. I've maintained it for 20 years. I've been happy here." She sighed, like a mother humoring a stubborn child. "I understand you're attached, Mom, but you can't live alone forever. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the gas? I can't live with that worry." Her tone carried concern, but her eyes did not. "And besides," she added, swirling her glass, "selling the house would give us a solid amount to make sure you're cared for properly. Of course, I'd handle all the arrangements." That night, after tucking Lucas into bed, I stayed awake, piecing everything together. Every little comment about elderly accidents, every sigh about how expensive it was to maintain this house, every casual mention of nursing homes as luxury resorts. It had all been part of a slow, calculated campaign to convince me I was helpless, when in truth she just wanted my money and my home. Early Monday morning, while Sabrina still slept off her hangover, I quietly got dressed, slipped my best leather handbag over my arm, gathered every document that mattered, and walked out the door, ready to reclaim the life she thought she already owned. My first stop was Wellspring Credit Union in Houston, where I asked to speak with the branch manager. I explained everything, every unauthorized withdrawal, every strange charge, and showed him the evidence. He immediately froze Sabrina's access to all of my accounts. "Mrs. Walker," he said respectfully, "you have every right to protect your assets. Your daughter-in-law is not legally allowed to withdraw money from a minor's account." I signed the new paperwork, changed all my passwords, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Financial freedom, reclaimed from under my own roof. My second stop was Attorney Martin Hale's office. There I officially revoked the power of attorney Sabrina had tricked me into signing, and we did something even more important. We drafted a new will. In the old one, everything went to Sabrina and Ethan. In the new one, every asset, house, savings, pension was placed in a trust for Lucas, to be managed by an independent trustee until he turned 25. Sabrina wouldn't get a single cent. "Mr. Hale," I said, my voice steady, "I want to make sure my grandson has a future, one built on honesty, not on manipulation or greed." When I left his office that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in years. But my plan was only beginning. That same evening, while Sabrina assumed I was taking my usual nap, I called a real estate agency in Clear Lake. The appraisal of my home surprised even me. $420,000, far higher than Sabrina had ever imagined. She'd been right about one thing. The area's value was rising fast, but she had no idea that I was already aware of it. The agent told me there were several interested buyers and that the sale could close in less than 3 weeks. "Mrs. Walker, are you sure about this?" he asked gently. "It's a big decision." "I'm 68, I said, "and I know exactly what I'm doing. My daughter-in-law wants my house, but not me. Now she'll learn the difference." In those days, I watched Sabrina with new eyes. I noticed the way she mocked older women on TV. "Oh, please, these dramatic old ladies, always exaggerating everything." I noticed how she snapped at Lucas whenever she was in a bad mood. "No, Lucas, not everything's about you." I noticed how she spent my money on useless luxuries, designer clothes, dinners out, beauty treatments, while haggling with me over the price of medication. "Mom, $60 for pills? Don't you think that's too much? Try the cheaper generic kind," she said one day, still holding shopping bags from Baybrook Mall filled with things she didn't need. That Wednesday, Sabrina brought me a surprise. She'd scheduled an appointment with a geriatric specialist for a routine checkup. "Mom, at your age, a full health exam is essential. This doctor is excellent. He specializes in seniors," she said with false concern. I agreed without question. But when we got there, I realized this wasn't a normal checkup. Sabrina stayed in the room the entire time, answering most of the doctor's questions herself. She spoke of my forgetfulness, my mood changes. The doctor turned to me. "Mrs. Walker, do you know what day it is? Can you recall the last few presidents? Any trouble managing your finances?" I answered every question clearly, better than I had in years, but I saw Sabrina trying to intervene. "Doctor, sometimes Mom forgets what day it is at home, and lately she's been misplacing her keys a lot." When we left the clinic, she was quiet, furious, clearly disappointed that the doctor hadn't found any trace of cognitive decline. Driving home, she finally said it. "Mom, I think you were nervous in there. You didn't sound like yourself." Unbelievable. She was trying to convince me that I had a problem, right after I'd proven I didn't. "Sabrina," I said calmly, "my mind is perfectly clear. In fact, I've never felt sharper than I do right now." She said nothing, but her knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. That night was the last dinner I ever had in that house. Sabrina made sandwiches, something quick, because she had an important appointment. Lucas was excited, talking about his new science project. "Grandma, I'm building a volcano that really erupts. Can you help me finish it?" "Of course, my angel," I said. Sabrina rolled her eyes. "Lucas, Grandma's too old to bend down and work on school projects. Ask your friend to help." "But I want Grandma to help me," he insisted. And in that tiny moment, his small voice, stubborn and pure, I knew exactly who I was fighting for. "No means no!" Sabrina screamed, and Lucas went silent instantly, his eyes brimming with tears. At that moment, something inside me broke, cleanly, permanently. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't anger, it was clarity. Sabrina hadn't just stolen my money or schemed to take my home. She was destroying the bond between my grandson and me, teaching him that elders didn't matter, that their voices could be ignored, that their feelings could be dismissed. She was raising him to believe that respect was optional. That night, after helping Lucas finish his volcano model, while Sabrina went out with her friends, I made the most important decision of my life. I stayed up until 3 a.m. writing letters. One to Lucas, explaining that everything I was about to do was out of love for him. One to Sabrina, outlining every discovery, every deceit, and what was coming next. And one to myself, something I'd never done before, but suddenly felt necessary. In that last letter, I wrote down every reason I deserved respect, every act of love I had given, every sacrifice I had made, and every time I'd stayed silent when I should have set boundaries. I wrote until my fingers ached, until my tears ran dry, until I felt I'd poured out every ounce of pain that had been living inside me for years. By 5 a.m., while the sky was still dark, I packed a small suitcase, only what truly mattered: the clothes I loved, my mother's silver necklace, photos of Lucas, and the rosary I'd carried for decades. I placed the letters neatly on the kitchen table, beside my house keys and the folder with the signed sale papers for the Clear Lake house. The sale would finalize in 15 days. I also left Lucas's savings passbook, with a note explaining that every dollar in it was his, and that I had protected it from the theft his mother had been committing. When I locked that front door for the last time, I felt no nostalgia, only release. For months, I'd been treated like a piece of worn furniture, something to be tolerated until it could be thrown out. Sabrina wanted me gone so she could claim everything I'd built, so I would give her exactly what she asked for: my absence. But without the reward she expected. The taxi ride to the Greyhound station in Houston didn't just take me away from that house. It carried me away from years of quiet humiliation. When the driver noticed my tears and asked softly if I was all right, I smiled and said, "I'm perfectly fine, young man. For the first time in a long while, I truly am." On the bus to Austin, as the landscape rolled by, I thought about what Sabrina would wake up to. Letters spelling out every truth she had refused to see. Legal documents proving the sale of a house she no longer owned. Bank statements exposing her theft. And, most painfully of all, my complete absence. No yelling, no pleading, no melodrama, only the absolute silence of a woman who finally decided her dignity was worth more than keeping a broken family intact. Sabrina had spent years telling me I was a burden, that I stood in her way, that I should just leave. Well, she finally got what she wanted. But she would never have imagined that when I left, I'd take everything that truly mattered with me. I arrived in Austin at 11 that morning. Standing at the bus terminal, waiting with open arms, was Claire Jennings, my old friend. The kind of friend time doesn't erase. "Irene, you look different," she said, carrying my suitcase. "You look free." She was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells in my own home. Claire's shop, Grace and Linen, was small but full of light, the clean scent of fresh fabric in the air. "This room is yours," she said softly, "for as long as you need." The little guest room was simple, neat, with a window overlooking a magnolia garden. It would be the first morning in years I'd wake up without shouting or complaints echoing down the hall. In those first few days in Austin, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Sabrina called for hours, first desperate, then furious, then pleading. I listened to every voicemail, but I never called back. "Mom, this is insane! You can't sell the house without asking me!" she screamed in one. In another, her tone shifted. "Mom, I'm sorry if I said things that hurt you, but you can't punish Lucas like this. He needs you." And finally, the most desperate one. "Irene, this is illegal. I'm going to file a lawsuit to stop the sale." Every message confirmed what I already knew. There was no real remorse, no acknowledgement of the cruelty she'd shown me. Only panic, because she was finally losing what she had always mistaken for hers. On the third day, I received a call from attorney Martin Hale. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "your daughter-in-law came to my office with a lawyer. They're attempting to challenge the house sale, claiming you're no longer mentally competent." I laughed, honestly laughed, for the first time in weeks. "Mr. Hale, I trust you showed them the full medical and psychological reports you had me complete?" "Of course," he replied. "The geriatric specialist certified that you're of sound mind. Your daughter-in-law has no legal standing. The sale will proceed exactly as planned." I hung up with a satisfaction I hadn't known in years. Sabrina had completely underestimated the mother-in-law she thought was too frail to fight back. That afternoon, while helping Claire prepare dinner in her small Austin kitchen, my phone rang again, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw the name. It was Lucas. "Grandma, why did you leave?" he sobbed. "Mom said you're mad at me." His trembling voice made my own hands shake. "Oh, my love," I whispered, "I could never be angry with you. You're the joy of my life." "Then why won't you come home? I miss you helping me with homework." Claire noticed the tears streaming down my face and gently set a hand on my shoulder. "Lucas," I said softly, "sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions to protect the people they love. I'm protecting you, even if you don't understand it yet." "But when will you come back?" he asked, his voice breaking. That question pierced straight through my chest. "I don't know, my angel," I said, "but I need you to remember, you will always be the most important person in my heart." After I hung up, I locked myself in the small guest room and cried harder than I had in years. But these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of rage. Rage because Sabrina was using Lucas to manipulate me. Rage because my grandson was now suffering the fallout of her selfishness. Rage because after everything I'd done for her, she still couldn't understand that I had left to protect Lucas. From growing up in a home where age was mocked and respect was extinct. Claire knocked softly. "Irene, may I come in?" She entered with a cup of hot peppermint tea and sat beside me on the bed. "You know," she said quietly, "my sister Marjorie went through something similar with her daughter. It hurts like hell, but you did the right thing." Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. That night, lying in my new bed, I began to replay how my life had led me here. I thought of Arthur, my late husband, the man who'd walked out when Ethan was only 6, too cowardly to face the weight of fatherhood. I remembered the endless nights I worked until 3 a.m. at a sewing factory in Pasadena, just to keep the rent paid. Ethan was a bright boy, curious eyes, mischievous grin, always asking when his father was coming home. "Soon, sweetheart," I'd lie, because I didn't have the heart to tell him his father had chosen freedom over family. For years, that boy was my only light. The reason I worked 18-hour days. The reason I kept going when exhaustion nearly crushed me. When Ethan turned 16, I'd saved for 2 years to throw him a small birthday party at the Clear Lake Community Hall. I bought him his first suit and hired a local jazz trio I knew from the hospital. That night, Watching him laugh and dance with his friends, I felt every sacrifice was worth it. "Mom, thank you for everything," he said, hugging me tight. "You're the best mom in the world." Those words had once been the single brightest thing in my memory. It's hard to believe that the grateful boy from that night had become a man too weak to stand up to his wife, a man who allowed her to turn me into a stranger in my own home. The next day, Claire suggested we take a walk through downtown Austin. It had been years since I'd gone anywhere without rushing. No chores, no deadlines, no one waiting for me to cook or clean. We strolled down Congress Avenue, browsing old boutiques, and stopping by Lady Bird Lake to eat ice cream like two carefree tourists. "Irene," Claire said, gazing at the water, "when was the last time you did something just for yourself?" I paused, trying to remember, and the silence between us said everything. I couldn't recall the last time I'd done anything purely for me. My entire life had revolved around the needs of others. First Ethan, then Sabrina. "You know," I said after a long moment, "I should call my old friend Rosie Mendez. We worked together back at the sewing factory in Pasadena." Rosie had married a small business owner and moved to San Antonio, but we'd kept in touch here and there. When I called her and told her what had happened, her response made my throat tighten. "Irene, I'm proud of you," she said warmly. "I always knew that woman was taking advantage of you. Every time I called and she answered, I could hear it in her tone, like I was bothering her." Rosie laughed softly. "She's not worth your peace. You did what every strong woman eventually does. You chose yourself." For the first time in a very long while, I finally believed her. Rosie invited me to visit her in San Antonio. "Come for a few days, Irene. I run a little linen shop and you could help me out. It'll do you good. Keep your hands busy, meet some new people." Her offer stayed with me long after we hung up. I began to think about all the opportunities I had turned down over the years, all the trips, the visits, the simple joys I had sacrificed just to be available for Ethan and Sabrina. I remembered when my dear friend Teresa invited me on a Caribbean cruise for her 60th birthday. "Teresa, I can't leave Sabrina alone with Lucas," I'd said. "She works so hard." But that had never been true. Sabrina worked barely 4 hours a day, spending the rest of her time at the gym or gossiping in cafes. I had given up a dream vacation to care for a grown woman who was perfectly capable of caring for herself. That Saturday morning, as Claire and I had breakfast in her backyard, an unexpected call came through. It was Caroline, Sabrina's younger sister, her voice tight with worry. "Mrs. Irene, where are you? Sabrina's losing her mind trying to find you." "I'm perfectly fine, Caroline," I said calmly, "and tell your sister to stop the theatrics." "But Lucas is heartbroken," she insisted. "He keeps asking for you." "Caroline," I said, my tone firm now, "Lucas is hurting because his mother is manipulating his emotions. Instead of telling him the truth, she's using his pain to make me feel guilty." There was a pause. Then Caroline spoke softly. "Honestly, Mrs. Irene, she's desperate. I don't think she ever believed you'd actually go through with this." "Exactly," I replied. "She never believed I was capable of protecting myself. That was her mistake." After I hung up, Claire looked at me thoughtfully and asked, "Irene, do you think Sabrina truly doesn't realize she's hurting you? Or that she just doesn't care?" Her question struck deeper than I expected. It was something I'd avoided confronting for years. I had told myself Sabrina acted that way because of stress, or her failing marriage, or the pressure of raising a child. But sitting there in the quiet of that sunny morning, I remembered all the little moments that proved otherwise. The glint in her eyes when she humiliated me in front of friends, the smirk when she borrowed money knowing she'd never return it, the way she would wink as if cruelty was just another joke. "Claire," I said after a long silence, "Sabrina knows exactly what she's doing, and I think she enjoys it, the power of it." It was the first time I'd said those words out loud, and the moment I did, a heavy weight lifted off my chest. For years, I'd forced myself to believe I was too sensitive, that I misunderstood her tone, that I was exaggerating. But the truth was far simpler and far more painful. She liked making me feel small because it made her feel important. And you know what the saddest part is? I added quietly. I let her. Because I was afraid of losing her love. But now I see that love never really existed. That afternoon, Attorney Hale called again, this time with good news. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "the sale of your Clear Lake property has officially closed. The funds have been deposited into your new account. Would you like me to arrange the transfer of your remaining belongings?" "Mr. Hale," I said, smiling, "everything that mattered to me I already took. The rest belongs to Sabrina and Lucas." "And the furniture? Some pieces clearly belong to you." "Leave it," I said gently. "Consider it my parting gift." When I hung up, Claire noticed the quiet smile on my face. "Good news?" she asked. "The best," I said. "I officially have no home in Houston anymore, and I've never felt freer." That evening, Claire cooked my favorite meal, lemon pepper chicken stew with saffron rice. As we ate, she told me about an old friend of hers named Eleanor, who had once gone through something similar. Eleanor had 3 children, and every one of them treated her poorly. One day, she disappeared, moved in with her sister in Savannah. Her children searched everywhere, and when they finally found her, she had rebuilt her life. A new job, new friends, even a man who adored her. When they confronted her, Eleanor simply said, "You called me a burden. Now you'll see how it feels to live without one." I laughed out loud. "And what happened then?" "At first they were furious," Claire said, smiling. "But a few months later, they realized how much they depended on her. They came back, apologized, but by then, she decided her new life was better." The next morning, Sunday, I was watering the magnolias in the garden when my phone rang again. The number was unfamiliar, but I decided to answer. "Mrs. Irene Walker?" "Yes, this is she. Who's speaking?" It was a young woman's voice, steady, polite, and unfamiliar. "I'm Ms. Thompson, Lucas's teacher," the young woman said gently. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am, but I'm worried about him." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong with my grandson?" "He's been very upset. He keeps asking for you. He says you left because he did something wrong. His mother told us you were sick, but Lucas insists you're fine, that you left because you were angry with him." The depth of Sabrina's manipulation truly knew no limits. "Ms. Thompson," I said calmly, "my grandson hasn't done anything wrong. I simply needed to remove myself from a very difficult situation at home. It has nothing to do with Lucas." "I understand, Mrs. Walker," she replied softly. "But would you consider writing him a letter? He needs to hear from you that none of this is his fault." That afternoon, I sat down and wrote the hardest letter of my life. In simple words, I explained to Lucas that sometimes adults must make difficult choices, that I loved him more than anything in this world, but that I needed to live in a place where I was treated with respect. I told him that one day, when he was older, he would understand. But for now, I wanted him to know just one thing: he had done nothing wrong. The next morning, Attorney Martin Hale called again, this time with unsettling news. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "your daughter-in-law is trying to locate you. She's hired a private investigator." My chest tightened. "Is that even legal?" "She can try," he said reassuringly, "but you're a competent adult. No one has the right to force you to reveal your location or accept unwanted contact. You are entirely within your rights." That afternoon, I told Claire about my worry. She poured us both tea and said firmly, "Irene, you can stay here as long as you like. Austin's a big city, and you haven't done anything wrong. You simply chose to leave your own house." Her words soothed me more than she knew. Over the next few weeks in Austin, I began to rediscover who I was, before I became the self-sacrificing mother who endured everything in silence. I woke up when I wanted to. I made breakfast slowly, savoring the quiet. I read the entire newspaper, not just the headlines while rushing to brew coffee. In the afternoons, I wandered through art galleries, sat in tiny cafes along South Congress Avenue, sipped cappuccinos, and watched people go by. It amazed me how much joy I had given up, just to please a woman who had never once said thank you. One morning, while I was sunning myself in the Grayson Linen Garden, Claire came out with a serious look. "Irene, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, a woman came by asking about you." My pulse quickened. Who? She said she worked in market research, but I'm fairly certain she was someone Sabrina hired to find you. My heart skipped. And what did you tell her? Claire smiled faintly. That I've never heard of anyone named Irene Walker. Then she met my eyes. But maybe it's time you decide. Are you going to keep hiding, or are you going to face her? She was right. I'd been running for weeks, but I couldn't run forever. That night, I made a decision. I called Rosie in San Antonio and finally accepted her offer. Rosie, does that job invitation still stand? Of course it does. When can you come? Next week. San Antonio was farther from Houston, and more than that, it offered something I hadn't had in years. Purpose, work, independence, a new beginning. I didn't want to live off the money from selling my house. I wanted to save it for Lucas's future, and I wanted to prove to myself and to Sabrina that at 68 I could still start over. Before leaving Austin, I decided to do something I'd avoided for too long. I called Sabrina directly. I dialed her number at 7 in the morning, knowing she'd be home. "Mom, is that you?" Her voice trembled with panic. "Yes, Sabrina, it's me." "Oh, thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm coming to get you right now." "Sabrina, I'm not telling you where I am, and I'm not coming back." "What? Mom, that's insane. We're family." "Sabrina," I said quietly, "for years you treated me like your housemaid. You stole my money. You planned to put me in a nursing home. You humiliated me in front of your son. That isn't family." "Mom, I never—" "Sabrina, don't interrupt me. I'm going to speak, and you're going to listen, for the first time in years." My voice was steady, firm, unshaking. "I sold the house because I found out you'd been taking money from Lucas's account. I changed my will because I discovered you were planning to seize everything I owned. And I left because you spit in my face and called me a rotten old woman. Do you need me to remind you of anything else?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, I was stressed. The divorce, the money." "Sabrina," I cut in, calm but cold. "Stress doesn't excuse cruelty. And you weren't struggling. You lived rent-free in my house, spent my money, and only worked part-time. What about Lucas? Are you going to punish your own son for your mistakes?" I knew what was coming next. The same emotional manipulation she'd always used. "Lucas isn't being punished," I said before she could speak. "He's learning that actions have consequences. When you hurt the people who love you, you can lose them forever. Mom, please, come back. I promise things will be different. Sabrina, you've been promising me that for years. You promised you'd find steady work. You promised you'd respect me. You promised you'd grow up. But the only promises you ever kept were the threats. You called me a burden and told me to leave. Well, this is exactly what you asked for." When I hung up, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from freedom. It was the first time in years I had spoken to Sabrina without apologizing for existing, without begging for affection, without accepting humiliation as love. Claire, who had overheard the last part of the call from the kitchen, came over and wrapped me in a hug. "Irene," she said softly, "I'm so proud of you. You finally spoke like a woman who knows her own worth." That afternoon, I packed my suitcase for San Antonio. I didn't know exactly what waited for me there, but for the first time in years, the uncertainty felt exciting instead of frightening. The day before I was set to leave, I got an unexpected call. It was Caroline, but her voice sounded different this time. Gentler, quieter. "Mrs. Irene, I need to tell you something important." "Go ahead, Caroline." "My sister..." Sabrina told me everything about Lucas's account, the power of attorney, the things she said to you. I didn't realize how bad it was. "Caroline, your sister's been treating me like that for years. This isn't new." "I know," she said, ashamed. "And I'm sorry. I used to think you exaggerated, but now I see you were telling the truth." "And why are you calling me now?" I asked. "To apologize," she said quietly. And to tell you I understand why you left. If I were in your shoes, I'd have done the same. I'm just not sure I'd have your courage." Her words lingered long after the call ended. For years, everyone in that family had known how Sabrina treated me, but no one intervened. It was easier for them to label me too sensitive than to confront the person causing the harm. "Caroline," I said before hanging up, "I hope this helps you treat your own mother better someday, because when a child sees their grandmother disrespected, they learn it's acceptable to treat their own mother the same way." "You're right, Mrs. Irene," she said softly. "I'll think about that a lot." The morning I left for San Antonio, I stood at the Austin bus terminal, looking around one last time, not at the station itself, but at the chapter of my life I was closing for good. I had been the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the woman who always put everyone else first, and in return, I'd been spit on by the very person I'd treated like a daughter. But that humiliation had woken me up from a long, painful sleep. It had brought me back to myself. As I stepped onto the bus to San Antonio, I wasn't just carrying a suitcase. I carried the wisdom of a woman who finally understood that self-respect isn't selfish. It's survival. When I arrived in San Antonio that Tuesday afternoon, Rosie was waiting at the terminal with a wide smile I hadn't seen in years. "Irene, you look different," she said, taking my bag. "You look more like you again." She was right. During that 5-hour ride from Austin, I felt every passing mile peel away the layers of the woman I used to be. The silent one, the compliant one, the one afraid to claim her own peace. Rosie drove me to her small home in Monte Vista, a quiet neighborhood shaded by old oak trees, the kind of place that reminded me of the Texas I'd once known, where neighbors still waved, and problems were solved with conversation, not shouting. The room she'd prepared for me was small but warm, with a window that looked out onto a garden full of white magnolias. For the first time in decades, I felt something simple, pure, and extraordinary. I was safe. "Irene, this house is yours for as long as you want it," Rosie said, resting a kind hand on my shoulder. "Tomorrow I'll take you to the shop. I think working again will do you a world of good." That night, as I unpacked my suitcase for the third time in a month, I realized something important. Each time I'd moved, I carried fewer possessions, yet more faith in myself. I no longer needed the things that once defined me. My real identity was slowly being reborn from the inside out. Rosie's shop, Silver Grace Boutique, specialized in clothing for women over 50. "Irene," she said as she guided me through the racks, "there's an entire market of women who still want to look beautiful, but can't find clothes that fit their age or shape. We don't sell 20-year-old dresses or matronly outfits. We sell grace, the kind that never expires." I felt a spark of excitement as I looked around. Tailored navy dresses, soft linen blouses, hand-painted silk scarves. "And what exactly will I do here?" I asked. "Help our customers," she said. "Guide them, make them feel seen. Women our age don't just buy clothes, they're buying back their confidence." My first day at work felt like discovering a new part of myself. Around 10 in the morning, a woman in her early 60s walked in, elegant, but with sadness in her eyes. "I'm looking for something to wear to a wedding," she said, her voice flat. "A happy occasion, I hope?" I asked, walking her toward the dresses. "It's my son's wedding," she sighed. "But my daughter-in-law doesn't want me there. I was only invited out of obligation. I feel like a stranger." Her words pierced me. I knew that ache. "What's your name, dear?" I asked softly. "Margaret." "Well, Mrs. Margaret," I said, "you are not an outsider anywhere. You're the groom's mother. Let's find something that reminds everyone exactly who you are. The queen of the day." We spent nearly an hour finding the perfect dress, an elegant navy piece that flattered her figure without shouting for attention. When she stepped out of the fitting room and looked in the mirror, her face transformed. "Is that really me?" she whispered. "That's the real you," I said. "You just needed a bit of light to shine again." When she left with her new dress and a radiant smile, Rosie turned to me. "Irene," she said, "you have a gift. You don't just sell clothes, you give women back their dignity. That afternoon, I realized something profound. Helping other women feel worthy was helping me heal too. The first weeks in San Antonio filled me with an energy I hadn't felt in decades. I woke at 6 a.m., not because anyone needed me, but because I wanted to greet the day. I ate breakfast slowly, soaking in the golden light. I walked 15 minutes to the shop, worked until 6, then spent my evenings reading or watching old films I loved. On weekends, I explored the city, strolling the Riverwalk, visiting the Spanish governor's palace, attending Mass at San Fernando Cathedral. It amazed me to rediscover that I still had opinions, interests, and a personality of my own, one that had been sleeping for years. One Saturday morning, I was having breakfast at a small cafe near Market Square when my phone rang. A number from Houston flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Mrs. Irene Walker? Yes, this is she. Who's calling? This is Attorney Robert Lang, representing Lucas's school. I'm sorry to bother you, but we need to discuss your grandson. My heart skipped. Is he all right? He's physically fine, ma'am, but we're concerned about his emotional state. Since you left, he's been withdrawn and unfocused. Yesterday, he said something that alarmed us. What did he say? I asked, my pulse quickening. He said it was his fault you left, that if he'd never been born, you would still be happy with his mother. Those words tore my heart apart. Mr. Lang, that's not true. Lucas has done nothing wrong. We know, he said kindly, but he's confused. His mother says one thing and you're not there to explain the truth. Would you consider coming to speak with him? Just a brief visit, to help him understand. The request left me torn in two. I wanted nothing more than to see Lucas again, but I also knew how easily Sabrina could twist this into emotional blackmail. That afternoon, I called attorney Martin Hale for advice. Mr. Hale, I asked, what if I go see Lucas and Sabrina tries to stop me from leaving? Mrs. Walker, you're a free citizen, he said firmly. No one can detain you or force you to stay anywhere you don't wish to. If you'd like, I can accompany you to make sure everything remains lawful. The thought of having him there eased my mind. And if she tries to block me from seeing him? I asked. You're the child's legal grandmother. If the school believes it benefits him, you have every right to that visit. I lay awake for nights, weighing the decision. Rosie urged me to go. Irene, that boy needs you, she said, and you need to see with your own eyes that he's okay. But Claire, when I called her in Austin, was more cautious. Be careful, Irene. Sabrina might be using him to pull you back. Don't you think it's suspiciously convenient that the school called right now? They were both right. But in the end, my love for Lucas won. I decided to return to Houston for one day, just long enough to see my grandson and tell him the truth. On Friday morning, I flew from San Antonio to Houston. It was my first time flying alone in years, and that small act of independence felt powerful. On the plane, I made myself a promise. I would not justify. I would not apologize for protecting myself. I would not be guilted back into chains. I would simply comfort a child wounded by the adults around him. When I landed, Martin Hale was waiting at the airport. We drove straight to the school. Are you ready, Mrs. Walker? He asked as we approached the administrative building. More ready than I've ever been, I said, my voice steady. The principal greeted us warmly. Mrs. Walker, she began, Lucas is a bright boy, but it's clear he's struggling emotionally. He needs stability to focus and learn. Have you spoken to his mother about this? Yes, I told the principal, but she insists the problem is that I left without saying a word. That's why you need me to speak to him directly, isn't it? When Lucas was brought into the office, my heart broke into pieces. He looked thinner, his eyes were ringed with shadows, and the moment he saw me, he burst into tears. Grandma, you're not mad at me anymore, are you? He ran toward me, and I hugged him as if we'd been apart for years, not just 2 months. My love, I whispered, I was never mad at you. I could never be. But you left without saying goodbye. Lucas, look at me, I said, holding his small hands in mine. Sometimes adults have to make very hard decisions. I left because at home I wasn't treated kindly, but that has nothing to do with you. You are the one thing I love most in this world. Then why won't you come back? The question I feared most. Lucas, I asked softly, did you ever see the way your mother talked to me? He lowered his head. Yes, ma'am. And how did that make you feel? Not good. I was scared she'd yell at you. That's right. I can't live in a place where I'm yelled at and disrespected, not because I'm proud, but because everyone deserves to be treated with respect and love. But I didn't do anything wrong. You didn't, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. That's why I wrote you a letter, to tell you exactly that. He frowned. Mom never showed me any letter. Those words cut straight through me. I understood immediately. Sabrina had hidden it. Another manipulation. Lucas, I said, tightening my grip on his little hands, I want you to understand something very important. I didn't abandon you. I just live somewhere else now, but I'm still your grandmother. And whenever you need me, I'll be here. I just can't go back to a place where people treat me badly. What if I promise that Mom will change? He asked innocently. The purity in his question shattered my heart. My love, adults only change when they truly want to, not when someone else asks them to. I hugged him tightly. We'll see each other again soon, I promise. Can I call you? Of course, I said. I'll give you my new number. As we left the school, Attorney Martin Hale asked gently, would you like to get lunch before your flight? Yes, I said. I need a moment to breathe. Over sandwiches near the airport, he asked, how do you feel after seeing him? Sad for him, I said, but steadier inside. That boy is being used as a pawn in his mother's game. And if Sabrina shows up at the airport? Let her. I'm not afraid anymore. During lunch, my phone buzzed nonstop. Sabrina had found out I was in Houston. She was calling relentlessly, her messages flashing across the screen. Mom, I know you're here. The school called me. Please, come home. We need to talk. You can't just disappear again. I'm begging you. Give this family another chance. Each line only proved what I already knew. The issue wasn't about another chance. It was about basic respect. At 3 p.m., Martin drove me to George Bush Airport. While waiting at the gate, I felt a quiet, pulsing pride. I'd come for Lucas. I'd done what I set out to do, and I was leaving without drowning in guilt or chaos. But Sabrina had other plans. As the boarding announcement echoed, I saw her, standing by the gate, holding Lucas's hand. When he spotted me, he broke free and ran. Grandma, don't go! Sabrina followed, tears glistening on cue, her performance flawless. Mom, please. Lucas needs you. I need you. Sabrina, I said calmly, we're not doing this here. This is an airport. There are people everywhere. Then come home, she pleaded. Let's talk like a family. Sabrina, we have nothing to discuss until you understand what you've done wrong. I already said I'm sorry. What more do you want? I don't need hollow apologies. I need real change. How can I change if you don't give me a chance? The same endless circle. Sabrina, I said, keeping my tone even. For 3 years, I've given you chance after chance. Every time you yelled and acted like nothing happened. Every time you disrespected me and I stayed quiet. Every time you borrowed money knowing you'd never pay it back. You've used up every chance you ever had. Lucas looked at us, confused, sensing the tension, but not the history. Look at what you're doing to him, Sabrina snapped. No, I said, steady as a blade. Look at what you've done to him for years. You put him in the middle of your mess instead of protecting him. Even now, you're using him to manipulate me. Sabrina went silent. Lucas tugged at my sleeve. Grandma, can I go with you? The question stabbed straight through me, but it confirmed what I already knew. This child was craving stability his mother couldn't give. Lucas, I said gently, kneeling to his level, you have to stay with your mom. That's your place. But remember this, whenever you need me, I'll always be here. Promise? I promise. I hugged him long and hard, whispering, be good, study hard, and remember, Grandma loves you more than anything. When I stood, Sabrina's face was flushed with restrained fury. This isn't over, Irene, she hissed. You're right, I said, smiling softly. "It isn't over. It'll only get worse if you still refuse to learn the lesson." On the flight back to San Antonio, I looked out the window at the clouds below. The meeting with Lucas had confirmed what my heart already knew. I'd made the right choice. That boy needed to see that some adults still respected themselves, that not everyone accepted abuse as love, and that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that teach others what dignity truly means. If I went back and became the same submissive grandmother I once was, I thought, I'd be teaching Lucas that love means enduring humiliation. Better that I teach him, through my own example, that self-respect is just as vital as love. When I returned to Rosie's house that night, she was waiting for me with a warm dinner and a soft, understanding smile. "How did it go?" she asked. "Hard," I said, sitting down, "but necessary. I saw Lucas. I made sure he knew none of this was his fault, and I also made sure Sabrina knew she still doesn't understand a thing." Rosie poured me tea. "And how do you feel?" "Free," I said simply. "For the first time in years, completely free." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, knowing I'd finally done the right thing, for Lucas and for myself. Saturday morning, I did something I'd put off for far too long. I called my old friends to tell them about my new life. The first was Elaine, my dear friend in Dallas. When I finished telling her everything, she was silent for a long while. Then she said, "Irene, you're brave. I've been enduring my son Mark's rudeness for years. I'm terrified of being alone." "Elaine," I said softly, "being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. The worst thing is living beside someone who doesn't respect you." I told her about the shop, Silver Grace Boutique, about the peace I'd found, the joy of independence. She sighed. "You know, Irene, you've given me a lot to think about." Monday morning, a new customer walked into the shop, a woman around 70, elegant, yet with sorrow in her eyes. "I'm looking for something to wear when I move into the nursing home," she said, her tone resigned. "My son says I can't live alone anymore." Something in her voice struck a chord so deep it almost hurt. "Do you want to go there?" I asked gently. "Of course not, but my son says it's for the best." "And what do you think?" She hesitated. "I think he wants to sell my house and needs me out of the way." We talked for nearly an hour. Her name was Margaret, and her story mirrored mine almost perfectly. A manipulative child, emotional blackmail disguised as concern, and a lifetime of being told what was best for her. "Mrs. Margaret," I said finally, "you are perfectly capable. Do you have your own pension and savings?" "Yes, both," she said, surprised. "Then why live by someone else's decisions instead of your own?" She was silent for a long moment. Then, instead of buying clothes for a nursing home, she chose a navy blue dress. "To think things over," she said, smiling faintly. That afternoon, Rosie came to me with a look that told me something big was coming. "Irene," she said, "I've been thinking. Would you like to become my business partner?" "Partner?" I blinked in disbelief. "Yes," she said, her voice warm and certain. "You have a gift with people. I'm planning to open a second location, maybe even add a personal styling service for mature women. Would you be interested?" For a moment I couldn't speak. Her offer wasn't just a financial opportunity, it was validation. Proof that I was valuable, capable, and worth investing in. "Rosie, are you sure? I've never been anyone's partner before." "Irene," she said with a grin, "you have something money can't buy. Life experience, empathy, and the ability to make women feel worthy again. That's exactly what this business needs." That night, I couldn't sleep. At 67, I had a chance to become an entrepreneur, financially independent, building something of my own. Something I had never even dared to dream of because I had spent my entire life living for others. Wednesday afternoon, as I was organizing the new stock in the shop, my phone rang. The screen read, "Lucas, Clear Lake School." "Grandma, is it true you're never going to see me again?" My heart clenched. "Who told you that, my sweetheart?" "Mom, she said since you don't want to come home, you don't want anything to do with me." I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. Sabrina's manipulation truly knew no bounds. "Lucas, that's a lie," I said firmly. "I will always want to see you, In fact, I was just thinking, maybe you could visit me during your school break." His voice lifted instantly. "Really? You mean it, Grandma?" "I mean it. But you'll have to ask your mom for permission, all right?" "I will," he said, his voice bright with hope. When I hung up, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from resolve. No matter what came next, I had already changed the story. This time, Lucas would grow up knowing that love without respect isn't love at all, and that a woman's strength can echo louder than silence ever could. "I'll ask Mom right now," Lucas said, his voice bright with hope. That afternoon, Sabrina called me, furious. "How dare you put those ideas into Lucas's head?" "I'm not sure what ideas you're referring to." "That nonsense about him visiting you." "Oh, that," I said evenly. "I didn't put anything in his head. It's just a summer visit, like any grandchild going to see their grandmother." "No way. You're not some normal grandma, Irene. You abandoned your family." "Sabrina, I didn't abandon anyone. I protected myself from an abusive daughter-in-law." "Oh, please," she snapped. "Stop playing the victim." "And you," I said calmly, "stop playing the innocent. You've known me for 34 years, Sabrina. You know exactly why I left that house." The call ended with a sharp click, but later that night Lucas called. "Grandma, Mom says you're dangerous. Is that true?" "My angel," I said gently. "That's not true at all. I'm the same grandma I've always been. The best one in the world, right?" He giggled through the phone. "Yes, Grandma." "Then don't worry. You know who I really am, and that's all that matters." That short conversation told me something important. Lucas was beginning to think for himself, to separate truth from manipulation. And that skill would protect him for the rest of his life. That Friday, I gave Rosie my answer. I accepted her offer of partnership. We signed the paperwork before a notary in Houston, and just like that, I became co-owner of Silver Grace Boutique. For the first time in my life, my name appeared on a legal document not as someone's dependent or beneficiary, but as a businesswoman. That night, we celebrated with a quiet dinner. Rosie handed me a new business card. Irene Walker, image consultant and co-founder. When I saw my name printed in that elegant script, tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but from pride. In the days that followed, I worked harder than ever. Each customer was a reminder that women our age still had so much to offer the world. One afternoon, a refined lady told me her family was pressuring her to sell her home and move in with a daughter who barely tolerated her. "Do you want to sell your house?" I asked. "Of course not. It's where my husband and I raised our children, but they keep saying it's for my own good." "Ma'am," I asked gently, "who gets to decide what's good for you?" She fell silent, long and thoughtful. That weekend I received a call that warmed my heart. It was Margaret, the woman who once came looking for nursing home clothes. "Irene," she said excitedly, "I had to tell you. I told my son I'm not going anywhere. That house is mine, and I'm staying. He got angry, but he couldn't force me." "How do you feel?" I asked. "Free," she said. "For the first time in months, free. And it's all because of our conversation." When I hung up, I realized something profound. My pain had turned into purpose. What once broke me had become my source of strength. That evening over dinner, I reflected on how far I'd come. 3 months ago, I'd been a humiliated woman, treated like an inconvenience in her own home. Now, I was an independent business owner, with friends, purpose, and dignity. "Rosie," I said softly, "I think I've found my calling, helping women like me rediscover their worth." She smiled. "I think you're right, Irene, and I think this is just the beginning." 3 months later, a call from attorney Martin Hale changed everything. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "Sabrina has just filed a lawsuit to nullify the sale of your house in Clear Lake." My stomach tightened. "Can she even do that?" "She's claiming you were unduly influenced when you signed the documents, but she has no legal grounds. However, there's something else." "What is it?" "She lost her job 2 weeks ago. She's in serious financial trouble." It was clear the lawsuit was nothing but a desperate move. The news stunned me, but it didn't bring the sorrow I might have felt before, only a mix of compassion and quiet confirmation that I'd made the right choice. Later that day, as I was helping a new client, my phone kept buzzing. A strange number. When I finally answered, the voice froze me in place. "Mrs. Walker?" "Yes, who's this?" "It's Caroline. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to talk, urgently." My heart tightened. "Is something wrong with Lucas?" "Not exactly us, but it's complicated. Could we meet in person? I'm in Houston." "You're in Houston?" "Yes, I came here just to see you. There are things you need to know about Sabrina and about Lucas." We met that afternoon at a small cafe on Westheimer Road. Caroline looked exhausted, her expression grave. "Aunt Irene," she began, "what I'm about to say won't be easy to hear." "Go ahead, Caroline," I said. "At this point, nothing can surprise me." "Sabrina's completely broke," she said quietly. "She was fired for showing up late too often. She's spent all her savings and owes 3 months of rent." I swallowed hard. "And Lucas?" "That's what worries me most," she said. "Sabrina's been telling everyone that you abandoned them out of selfishness, that you don't love your family anymore. Lucas hears 2 different stories, one from her, one from you. He's confused." Caroline paused, then said something that shattered me. "Last week I visited them. Lucas was doing homework alone while Sabrina was arguing with her landlord on the phone. He looked up at me and asked, 'Is it true Grandma doesn't love me anymore? Because I'm a burden?' Tears welled in my eyes as I imagined Lucas believing his grandmother didn't love him anymore. "What did you say to him?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I told him the truth," Caroline said softly, "that you love him more than anything in this world. But you had to leave because Sabrina treated you terribly. Do you know what he said?" "I can't imagine," I whispered. "He said he already knew. He said he always felt awful watching his mom yell at you, but he didn't know what to do to make it stop." I took a slow breath. "Caroline, why are you telling me all this?" She sighed. "Because Sabrina asked me to convince you to come back, but after seeing how things really are, I think you deserve the full truth before you decide anything." "And what's the whole truth?" I asked calmly. "That Sabrina hasn't changed," Caroline said. "Not one bit. She's still blaming everyone else, still expecting others to clean up her mess. She's using Lucas as an emotional weapon to pull you back." I closed my eyes. I'd already known it deep down, but hearing it from Caroline was the confirmation I didn't realize I needed. That night, after Caroline left, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer, and thought about Lucas. Rosie must have sensed something in my silence. She came in quietly, sat beside me, and asked, "Irene, what are you going to do?" "I don't know, Rosie. Part of me knows I can't go back to Sabrina, but another part," I swallowed hard, "can't stand the thought of Lucas suffering for his mother's mistakes." Rosie was quiet for a long moment, then said, "What if there's a third option?" I turned to her. "What do you mean?" "What if Lucas came to live with you, here, in Houston, away from all that toxicity?" The idea startled me, half terrifying, half exhilarating. "But Sabrina would never agree to that. If she's broke and can't provide for him properly," Rosie said gently, "she might not have much of a choice." The next morning, I called attorney Martin Hale to ask if it was even possible. "Mrs. Walker," he said over the phone, "if Sabrina is in financial distress and you can demonstrate that your home is stable, you could petition for temporary guardianship, especially if there's evidence that the child's emotional well-being is at risk." "But she'll fight it," I said quietly. "She might," he admitted. "But if she can't offer a stable environment, the court will act in the child's best interest. That's the law." The thought began to form, clearer with every minute, a possible path forward, a way to save Lucas without sacrificing myself. That same afternoon, my phone rang again. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Sabrina. Her voice sounded different this time, tired, shaky, stripped of all her usual arrogance. "Mom," she said softly, "I need to talk to you." "Go ahead, Sabrina." "I'm in trouble. Serious trouble." For the first time in years, I heard something real in her voice. No manipulation, no performance. "What kind of trouble? Money?" "They're about to evict me. I have no job, and I don't know what to do with Lucas anymore." "And why are you calling me?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. "As far as I remember, I was just a useless old woman who got in your way." "Mom, please. I know I've treated you horribly." "Yes, you have, Sabrina. You stole my money. You tried to take my home. You humiliated me again and again." On the other end of the line, silence. Only the sound of her unsteady breathing. "Mom," she said finally, her voice cracking, "I don't even know how to apologize." "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for," I said quietly. "It's something you earn. So tell me, what have you done to earn it?" "Mom," her voice broke, "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About how I treated you. About how I became someone I don't even like anymore." For the first time in many years, I heard sincerity, raw and unfiltered. I drew a deep breath. "And what have you concluded from all that, Sabrina?" "That I've been a terrible daughter," Sabrina said quietly, her voice cracking. "That I took advantage of your kindness. That I lost the best mother in the world because of my own selfishness." Tears streamed down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of joy. They were the deep, aching kind that come from realizing how much time has been lost. "Sabrina," I asked softly, "do you truly understand what you've done to me?" "I think I do," she said. "I made you feel like a burden in your own home. I stole from you. I disrespected you in front of Lucas. I treated you like a housekeeper, not like my mother." "And why did you do all that?" She took a shaky breath. Because I felt like a failure. My marriage fell apart. I couldn't hold a steady job. I was living in your house at 34, and instead of trying to fix my life, it was easier to blame you for everything that went wrong." It was the first time Sabrina had ever taken full responsibility. No excuses, no self-justification, no deflection. "And what is it you want from me now?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Help," she said. "Not for me. For Lucas. He doesn't deserve to suffer because of my mistakes." "What kind of help?" "I don't know," she admitted. Maybe he could stay with you for a while I get my life together. I know I have no right to ask after everything I've done, but he needs you." Her suggestion caught me off guard precisely because it came from her. "You'd let Lucas live with me? If that's what's best for him, yes," she said firmly. "You've always been a better mother than I ever was, and you're certainly a better grandmother than I've been a mother." Her words filled me with a complex storm of emotions. Part of me felt an odd sense of peace, knowing she finally understood the weight of her actions. Another part of me ached, for the broken woman she'd become, no matter what she had done to me. And above all, I felt a quiet hope at the thought of giving Lucas a stable, loving home. "Sabrina," I said carefully, "if we even consider that option, you need to understand a few things. First, it doesn't mean everything is instantly forgiven. Second, if Lucas stays with me, he'll follow my rules, not yours. And third, you'll need to show real change, not just make promises." "I understand all of that, Mom, and I accept the conditions." "Are you sure? Because Lucas isn't some object you can loan out and take back whenever it's convenient. If he comes to stay with me, it'll be because it's what's best for him, not a temporary solution to your problems." "Mom," she said softly, "for the first time in a long time, I'm actually thinking about what's best for my son, not what's easiest for me." We agreed that Sabrina would talk to Lucas about the idea, and then we'd have a conversation together to decide. 2 days later, Sabrina and Lucas arrived in Houston by bus. When I saw my grandson step off, my heart swelled with pure joy. He'd grown in those few months, taller, calmer, his eyes clearer than I remembered. Sabrina, on the other hand, looked worn out, thinner, pale, dark circles under her eyes betraying sleepless nights. When we hugged, it felt different this time. There was no tension, no pretense, no icy detachment. It was the embrace of a daughter who finally understood the value of what she'd almost destroyed. Rosie greeted them with the kind of warmth that could melt stone. She'd prepared the guest room for Sabrina and bought new toys for Lucas. During dinner, I watched them interact. Sabrina was attentive, patient, more present than I'd seen her in years. "Grandma," Lucas asked between bites, "is it true I can come live with you?" "Would you like that, sweetheart?" "Yes, but what about Mom? I don't want her to be alone." His concern for his mother showed the kindness still intact inside that child's heart, a heart that had survived years of chaos. "Lucas," Sabrina said gently, "Mommy's going to be okay. I just need some time to fix a few things in my life. And while I do, you'll be better off staying with Grandma." "You'll visit me, right?" "Of course, my love. And when I've sorted everything out, we'll be together again." "You promise?" "I promise," she said softly. "But this time," she added with a trembling smile, "it'll be a promise I actually keep." That night, after tucking Lucas into bed, Sabrina and I had the most honest conversation of our lives. "Mom," she began quietly, "I want you to know, I don't expect your forgiveness right away." "Sabrina, forgiveness is a process," I said softly. "It doesn't happen overnight." "I know," she nodded, "and I know I have to prove, through my actions, that I've really changed." "What's your plan?" I asked. "First, to find a stable job. I've already lined up a few interviews here in Houston. Second, to get professional help, to understand why I became such a bitter person. And third, to pay off every single debt I owe, including what I stole from you. And after that, if you'll let me, I want to earn back the right to be part of this family again. Not like before, when I only took and never gave, but as a daughter who respects and appreciates her mother." Her words cut deep, stirring something inside me. I could see glimpses of the child I once raised with love and hope, but I also knew better than to let words alone soften me. Sweet apologies were easy, consistent action was not. "Sabrina," I said quietly, "I'm glad to hear you say that, but it's going to take time and consistent action for me to trust you again." "I understand," she replied, "and I won't pressure you. If it takes years to earn your trust, then I'll spend those years doing it." "And if you never get it back entirely?" I asked, my tone firm but not cruel. She hesitated, then said something that stayed with me. "Then at least I'll have peace knowing I tried to repair the harm I caused, and that Lucas got to grow up in a healthy environment with you." The following days were emotionally charged. Sabrina and Lucas stayed with me for a week in Houston, getting a glimpse of the life I'd built, peaceful, structured, and honest. They watched me work at Silver Grace Boutique, saw how calm a home could be when no one was shouting, how quiet could actually feel safe. Sabrina helped with everything without being asked, washing dishes, making beds, taking Lucas to the park. It was as if she was trying to prove she could be someone who cared. "Mom," she said one afternoon while we were making dinner together, "I never realized how much you did around the house. I always thought things just happened." Lucas, for his part, blended into Clear Lake life like he'd been born for it. He loved my room, adored Rosie's garden, and quickly became friends with the neighbors' grandchildren. One afternoon, while playing in the yard, he looked up and asked, "Grandma, how come nobody yells here?" I smiled. "Because here, sweetheart, people talk with respect." "I like it," he said. "I like it a lot." That night, as I tucked him into bed, he asked something that broke my heart. "Grandma, why did Mom used to yell at you so much?" "I don't know, my angel. Sometimes adults make big mistakes." "Will she yell at you again?" "I hope not, sweetheart," I whispered. "I truly hope not." On the last day of their visit, Sabrina made a decision that stunned me. "Mom," she said, "I've thought about it, and I think Lucas should stay here with you permanently." "Are you sure?" "Completely. This week, I've seen him happier than he's been in months. Here, he has stability, peace, and unconditional love. I'm just starting to learn how to be a responsible mother. He can't wait for me to figure it out." "What will you do?" I asked gently. "I'll go back to Houston," she said. "I'll find work, get therapy, rebuild my life. And when I've truly changed, when I've become someone Lucas can be proud of, then maybe we can talk about other possibilities." That afternoon, we began the legal process to make Lucas's stay official. Sabrina signed every document. No hesitation, no conditions, no drama. "Mom," she said softly as she put her name on the final page, "thank you for saving my son from my mistakes." "Sabrina," I said, "I'm not saving Lucas from you. I'm giving him a chance to grow in a stable home while you work on healing yourself. There's a difference." "You're right, Mom," she whispered. "You always are." When she boarded the bus back downtown, we both cried, but for very different reasons. Mine were tears of hope. Hers were tears of resolve. The first months with Lucas in Clear Lake were a season of quiet adjustment and unexpected joy. I enrolled him in a wonderful school just a few blocks from the boutique, close enough that I could pick him up after work. Afternoons became our favorite time. We did homework together, cooked simple meals, watched old movies, and played at the park until dusk. On weekends, we explored Houston like tourists, museums, local fairs, little neighborhood cafes. It was the family life I had always dreamed of, but never truly lived when Sabrina was a child. Back then, I was too busy surviving, too busy working, to simply enjoy being a mother. Sabrina kept her promise. She called me once a week to update me on her progress. She'd found a receptionist job at a medical clinic in Midtown, started regular therapy sessions, moved into a small but decent apartment. But most importantly, our conversations changed. She no longer called to beg for help or to complain about her troubles. She called to ask how I was doing, to check in on Lucas, to share something positive from her week. "Mom," she said during one call, her tone lighter than I'd heard in years, "my therapist is helping me understand that for years I resented you for no reason. I blamed you for my marriage falling apart, for my financial mess, really, for everything that went wrong in my life." "And what do you think now?" I asked. "That you were the only person who ever stood by me, that you gave me everything you could, and that I mistook your unconditional love for an obligation to endure my cruelty." Those words healed something I hadn't realized was still bleeding. They didn't erase the past, but they opened a door I thought had been sealed forever, a door to hope, to the possibility of real respect between mother and daughter. 6 months after Lucas came to live with me, Sabrina visited for his birthday. The woman who stepped off that bus was unrecognizable. She'd gained healthy weight, her face had color again, and she dressed with quiet care. But what struck me most was the serenity in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Her reunion with Lucas was pure tenderness. No guilt, no frantic apologies, just genuine love. "Mom, you look beautiful," Lucas said, running into her arms. "That's because I'm so happy to see you, my love," she replied. Throughout her visit, she acted like the daughter I had always hoped to have. She helped around the house without being asked, played with Lucas without checking her phone, talked to me like an equal, about real things, not manipulation or blame. One night, after Lucas had gone to bed, Sabrina and I had a conversation that changed everything. "Mom," she said quietly, "I want to formally apologize for everything I did to you." "Sabrina, no. Please let me finish." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "For years, I disrespected you. I stole from you. I humiliated you. I treated you like a maid instead of a mother. I plotted to take your house and send you to a nursing home against your will. I spat in your face and said things no one should ever say. There's no excuse for any of it." I listened, silent. "And why are you apologizing now?" I asked finally. "Because I finally understand the damage I caused. Therapy has shown me that what I did wasn't just rude, it was abuse. And I want you to know that I take full responsibility for every single thing I did." "What do you want to happen now?" "Nothing," she said, tears filling her eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I don't even expect you to forget. I just want you to know that I understand, and that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be a better person." For the first time in years, I embraced my daughter without fear, without hesitation, without armor. It wasn't the embrace of reconciliation yet. It was the embrace of recognition, of seeing her finally become the woman I'd always known she could be. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had led here. A year ago, I was a humiliated woman, robbed, disrespected, discarded in her own home. Now, I was a businesswoman, a grandmother, a woman who respected herself. I had lost a house, but I had gained a life. I had lost an abusive daughter, but I had found one in healing. 2 years later, my life in Clear Lake became everything I had ever dreamed, only better, because it was real. Silver Grace Boutique now had 3 branches across the Houston area. Our self-esteem workshops for older women had grown so popular that we had a 2-month waiting list. Every morning I woke up not with dread, but with the calm excitement of a woman who had purpose. Lucas, now 11, was thriving, confident, joyful, respectful. Top grades, dozens of friends. Watching him grow in stability was a daily confirmation that I had made the right choices. One April morning, as I watered the bougainvillea Rosie and I had planted years before, a letter arrived that filled me with quiet pride. It was from the Houston Chamber of Commerce, informing me that Silver Grace Boutique had been selected as Business of the Year for senior inclusion. The recognition wasn't for sales numbers, but for our free workshops, helping older women rebuild self-worth after divorce, widowhood, or family estrangement. I stood there, the sunlight warm on my hands, and thought of how far we'd come, from pain to peace to purpose. And for the first time in my life, I didn't whisper thank you out of desperation. I whispered it out of gratitude. "Irene!" Rosie shouted from the kitchen the moment I told her the news. "We have to celebrate. This is huge." That afternoon, as we prepared a special dinner to mark the occasion, I realized I hadn't just built a new life. I had found my true calling. Lucas came running home from school, his backpack bouncing and his smile bright enough to light the whole house. "Grandma, my teacher said my project on American businesswomen won first place." His project was about me, about how a 67-year-old woman started a successful business after a family crisis. "My love, I'm so proud of you," I said, hugging him tight. "But more importantly, are you proud of me?" "Of course I am. I told all my friends my grandma's a famous businesswoman in Houston." His words filled me with a joy I'd never known, the joy of being seen, respected, and admired by someone who truly understood me. That night, after tucking Lucas into bed, I sat in my favorite chair on the porch, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands, watching the stars shimmer on the still surface of Clear Lake. It had been exactly 3 years since the night Sabrina spat in my face and called me a filthy old woman. 3 years since I made the hardest and most freeing decision of my life. In that time, I had rebuilt everything. I'd rediscovered my worth as a woman. I'd raised a grandson in a healthy home, and I'd helped dozens of women find their own strength again. But above all, I'd learned that self-love isn't selfish. It's the foundation of every healthy relationship. Sabrina, to her credit, kept her word. For the past 2 years, she had visited every 3 months, always respectful, always grateful, always aware that she was a guest in my home, under my rules. Her visits had become moments of quiet joy instead of tension. She'd been promoted to administrative coordinator at her job, paid off all her debts, kept up with therapy, and built a calm, stable life of her own. But most importantly, she had learned how to love without control, to care without possession, to be present without invading. "Mom," she told me during her last visit, "thank you for teaching me that loving someone sometimes means letting them go." One afternoon in May, while I was assisting a new client at the boutique, a woman walked in who instantly reminded me of myself 3 years earlier. She was about 65, neatly dressed but weary. Her shoulders slumped. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if she were sorry just for taking up space. "I'm looking for something elegant," she murmured, "but not too expensive." "For what occasion?" I asked gently, using the warmth I'd learned to reserve for women who carried invisible bruises. "Well, my children are moving me into a nursing home. They want me to look presentable for the interview." Her words hit me like a mirror. "Do you want to move into that nursing home?" I asked, direct but kind. "Of course not," she sighed. "But they say I can't live alone anymore, that I'm a burden. And what do you think?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I think they want to sell my house and split the money. But if I say that out loud, they'll call me paranoid." I guided her to the small consultation area we'd created for moments exactly like this. "May I ask your name?" "Carmen." "Well, Carmen," I said, looking her straight in the eye, "you're of sound mind, right?" "Absolutely." "And you have your own income, retirement, savings?" "Yes, both." "Then why are you living the life they want instead of the life you want?" We talked for 2 hours. Carmen's story unfolded like an echo of my own past. Manipulative children, emotional blackmail dressed up as concern, and endless pressure to make choices that weren't really hers. But I also saw something in her that moved me deeply. That same spark I'd once felt ignite in myself the day I finally decided to protect my own life. "Carmen," I said at last, "do you know what you really need?" She blinked. "What?" "A lawyer, not a new dress." I handed her the business card of attorney Martin Hale, who now specialized in elder financial abuse cases across Houston. "And one more thing, Carmen," I added softly. "You're not crazy, you're not paranoid, and you are certainly not a burden. You're a capable, intelligent woman being manipulated by the very people who were supposed to protect you." 2 weeks later, Carmen returned to Silver Grace Boutique transformed. She walked taller, spoke firmly, and her eyes gleamed with clarity. "Irene, I have to tell you what happened," she said, smiling. "I followed your advice. I hired the lawyer. Turns out my children had met with a real estate agent to appraise my house without my permission." "And what did you do?" "I told them I knew everything, that I'd rewritten my will, and that if they kept pressuring me, they wouldn't inherit a single penny." "How did they react?" "At first, they were furious. Then they tried to convince me I was sick. When that didn't work, they begged. But I stood my ground. In the end, they had no choice but to accept that I'll stay in my home as long as I please." Stories like Carmen's had become common in my new life. Through the boutique, I'd met dozens of older women in similar situations and had learned that elder abuse by one's own children was far more widespread than society cared to admit. That's why Rosie and I decided to expand beyond fashion. We began hosting self-esteem workshops, talks on seniors' legal rights, and a Tuesday afternoon support group we called Women with Purpose. It became a refuge, a safe place for women rediscovering their worth after years of emotional or financial mistreatment. One June afternoon, while I was leading one of those workshops, a young woman entered who immediately drew my attention. She was about 35, elegantly dressed, but her face carried a quiet sadness. She sat in the back, didn't speak, just took notes the entire time. After the session, she approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Irene, may I speak to you privately?" "Of course, sweetheart." We sat in my office, and she began to cry. "I think I'm like the daughter you talked about in your presentation. I think I've been mistreating my mother without realizing it." Her name was Anna, and her story made my chest tighten, because in her, I saw Sabrina 3 years earlier. "My mom's been living with me since my dad died 2 years ago," she explained. "At first it was supposed to be temporary, but she stayed, and I've been awful to her. I yell at her. I ignore her. I make her feel like she's a burden." "Why do you think you do that?" I asked gently. "Because I'm disappointed in my own life. I got divorced last year. Money's tight, and it's easier to take it out on her than to face my own problems." "And how does that make your mother feel?" "Sad. Very sad. Yesterday, I saw her crying in the kitchen. When I asked why, she said, 'It's nothing, but I know it's because of me.'" We talked for almost an hour. I shared my own story, not to judge her, but to help her see the harm she was causing before it was too late. "Anna," I said softly, "your mother won't be here forever, and when she's gone, you'll have to live with the way you treated her." She wiped her eyes. "Do you think I can still fix it?" "Of course, but it has to be real change, not just promises. You need to get help for yourself, treat your mother with respect, And above all, stop blaming her for what isn't her fault. Anna left that day with a list of therapists I'd recommended and a promise to return in a month to tell me how things were going. A month later, she did, and she brought someone with her, a graceful woman in her 70s, with warm eyes and trembling hands. "Mrs. Irene, this is my mother, Elaine," Anna said, smiling. "She wanted to thank you herself." Elaine embraced me, her voice breaking. "You have no idea how much my daughter has changed since the day she spoke with you. She doesn't yell anymore. She asks for my opinion. She treats me with love. It's like I got my daughter back." Anna had kept her word. She was in therapy, learning how to treat her mother with the dignity she deserved and letting go of the blame that had poisoned their bond. "Mrs. Irene," Anna said quietly, "you saved me from becoming someone I never wanted to be." Encounters like that had become the greatest reward of my new life. Each woman who reclaimed her self-respect, each daughter who recognized her own cruelty before it was too late, each family pulled back from the edge. All of it reminded me that my pain had a purpose. I hadn't suffered in vain. I had suffered to learn, to grow, and to help others. My personal wounds had become tools for healing, proof that women are not alone, that they have choices, and that they are worthy of respect. Then, in August, a call came that filled me with joy. It was Carmen, the very woman I'd met in those early days, the one who had once come looking for a dress to wear to a nursing home. "Irene," she said, her voice glowing, "I have news. My son officially apologized for trying to force me to sell my house. He's in family therapy now, and we're rebuilding our relationship." "And how do you feel?" I asked. "Free," she said. "Respected, valued, for the first time in years. My son talks to me like an adult now, not like a child." "And what have you learned from all this?" "That I have to protect myself, because no one else will. And that you were right, Irene. Love doesn't mean enduring abuse." One September afternoon, while Lucas was doing homework at the kitchen table, he looked up and asked a question that stopped me cold. "Grandma," he said softly, "have you forgiven my mom?" The question hung in the air. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because at school," he said, "we're doing a project about forgiveness, and I want to know, have you forgiven everything that happened?" I sat down beside him, choosing my words with care. "Lucas," I began, "forgiveness is complicated. It's not like in the movies where someone says sorry and everything magically goes back to normal." "So, you haven't forgiven Mom?" "Forgiveness is a process, my love. Your mother did things that hurt me deeply, but she's also worked hard to change. That means I'm in the process of forgiving her." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I don't feel angry at her anymore. It means I can be around her without pain, that I recognize her effort to become a better person. But it also means I haven't forgotten what happened, and I still keep my boundaries, to protect myself. And if Mom ever acts badly again, then I'll have to make difficult choices again," I said gently. "But I hope it won't come to that." He looked at me with a thoughtful seriousness that no 11-year-old should have, then smiled. "Grandma, I'm proud of you." "Why, sweetheart?" "Because you're brave. You didn't let people treat you badly. You taught me that I have to respect myself." His words confirmed what I had always hoped to teach him, that the most important lesson wasn't about forgiveness, but self-respect. In October, I received an invitation that touched me deeply. The University of Houston asked me to give a lecture on late-life entrepreneurship to their business students. It was an academic acknowledgement that my experience mattered, that my story could inspire others. On the day of the event, the auditorium was full. Dozens of young faces listened with quiet attention as I shared how I'd launched a thriving business at 67, after enduring the hardest personal crisis of my life. At the end, a young woman raised her hand. "Mrs. Walker," she asked, "what would you say to an older woman being mistreated by her family who's afraid to stand up for herself?" "I'd tell her it's okay to be scared," I said, "but living in fear is worse than facing uncertainty. I'd tell her she deserves respect, that she has choices, and that it's never too late to begin again. Nee, another student asked. And what would you say to the sons or daughters who mistreat their parents without realizing it? I'd tell them to open their eyes before it's too late. Their parents won't be here forever, and when they're gone, those children will have to live with how they treated the people who gave them life. After the talk, several students came to share their own stories about grandparents who'd been ignored, about parents who'd been silenced. I realized my story had touched something raw and true in them. Maybe, just maybe, a few would go home that night and see their elders through different eyes. And that thought filled me with peace. In November, Sabrina came for Lucas's birthday. As always, she arrived on time, brought gifts, helped with preparations, and treated my home and rules with respect. During the party, I watched her with Lucas, attentive, gentle, loving, but without that old desperate need to control. She had learned to mother without suffocating, to love without clinging. That night, after Lucas went to bed, she said quietly, "Mom, I want you to know that every day I'm grateful for the decision you made 3 years ago." "Why's that?" I asked. "Because you forced me to grow up. You made me face my own problems instead of blaming others. You pushed me to become the mother Lucas needed me to be." "Sabrina, do you really think you needed me to leave to learn that?" "Honestly, yes. I was too comfortable mistreating you, knowing you'd always endure it. I never would have changed if you hadn't drawn such a hard line." "And you don't resent that I did?" She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Quite the opposite. I regret taking so long to realize I was abusing you. I regret that you had to go that far for me to finally understand." It was the first time Sabrina ever used the word abuse to describe her own behavior. And in that moment, I knew she finally understood the gravity of what she'd done. In December, while we were decorating the house for Christmas, Lucas asked a question that filled my heart with quiet pride. "Grandma, can I invite my friends to our Christmas open house? I want them to meet the best grandma in Clear Lake." His request moved me more than he could ever know. It represented everything I'd built, a home full of love, respect, and warmth. A home children wanted to visit because they knew they'd be welcomed. A home where peace had replaced tension. "Of course, my love," I said. "This house is yours, as much as it's mine." The Christmas party was a beautiful chaos. 15 children with their parents, laughter echoing through the rooms, carols playing softly, the smell of cinnamon and pine in the air. Many parents thanked me for my hospitality, but one mother said something I'll never forget. "Mrs. Walker," she told me, "my son keeps talking about you. He says he hopes his grandmother will be like you when he grows up." Those words told me I had achieved something greater than business success. I had become a living example of dignity and quiet strength for a new generation. On New Year's Eve, as Sabrina, Lucas, and I sat together in the warm golden light of the kitchen, I thought about everything that had changed over those 3 years. I had lost a house, but gained a home. I had lost an abusive daughter, but found one in healing. I had lost the false peace of submission, but gained the true peace that comes from mutual respect. And above all, I had discovered a truth that now defined my life. It is never too late to begin again, to protect your rights, to reclaim your worth, and to demand the respect you have always deserved.